We've made you laugh. We've made you cry. No, I'm just kidding. This is the finale of the How To Podcast Guide from freepodcasttools.com. I'm Hank, and I'm joined by Mel, resident guinea pig of this whole experiment. So, how are you today, Mel?
I am great like always.
Fan.
That should be a Patreon level.
We used one of your other slogans.
Which is what?
I agree.
Nice.
So on the legalities front, I am not a lawyer. You can take anything I say with a grain of salt, even though I graduated summa cum laude from the School of Hard Knocks. Definitely consult a lawyer before you get into any agreements in podcasting. So there are pitfalls. We've already talked about copyright images, music, sound effects, and stuff like that. So we're not going to beat that again. We already talked about that in earlier videos. So now here's the part that's not so fun: co-host. So when you have co-hosts and you're like, man, we've been friends for 6 months. Yay, we've reached our milestone. And then you're like, okay, now we can't stand each other. Now is the divorce. So who owns this? Who owns that? It's a mess. I've watched it play out over and over again, and I've lived it, unfortunately, more times than I want to admit. So before you pay the lawyer later, go ahead and pay one first to have a legally binding agreement. If you're not willing to do that, I would say either A, rethink podcasting with someone else, or B, buy everything yourself before you approach the co-host. Buy the domain name, come up with the concept and the show art and the music and stuff. So then when they come on board, you can prove that all they did was lend their voice. That's just my humble opinion. This is not legal advice. But definitely define who owns what. So when Mel starts his podcast, he owns all of it. So he owns everything to do with it. I'll just help host it and all that stuff if he wants me to. And other than that, it's his. And I'll have my lawyer draft that up. And so he can feel comfortable and confident that that's the way it's going to go. And then there's no, well, it's a TP network property and all that stupid stuff. So I try to put people at ease on stuff like that. On the same token, what has bitten me in the past and continues to bite me is I send out equipment to people. And I've had people just stop podcasting. I had a person start podcasting for another network with the equipment I sent them.
I literally was guessing that like a year ago.
Thousands of dollars in equipment I've sent out over the years, and there's a lot of it that's just in the wind.
I pictured you giving out equipment to a certain person and then saying, hey, hey, can you give me that stuff back? And she pulled a Debo moment and said, what stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Sorry.
Yep.
I'm laughing, but that's your personal experience.
Right. And she doesn't follow me on Twitter in case you want to investigate. Which I'm saying she does follow me on Twitter. And did go work for another network on the same competing show I had her on.
Sorry.
But I'll digress and get over it. So from now on, when I send out equipment, I'm going to start sending out a little notice that they sign first, and then which says I either get the equipment back or I get a percentage of the amount of cost. Obviously, it devalues over time.
Yeah, equipment depreciates. That makes sense.
Yes. So I will do that going forward. And you're going to have to, since you can't split a podcast in half, you have to have one person that's in charge of everything. So when Mel makes his, he's in charge of all his extra stuff, domain and all that kind of stuff. If he says, hey, I want to take this and I'm going to some other network, or I'm going to take it on my own because it's built up enough or whatever, and then he can just exit that way, You can have a defined time that you want to work with somebody, like episode count or years or months or whatever it may be, but just have all that stuff predetermined out there. If you want to see a situation that went sideways terribly, check out Jordan Harbinger's nightmare scenario. Like, just search Jordan Harbinger podcast split or Art of Charm. And that was a nightmare scenario where he basically got taken off his podcast. So,
Jiminy Christmas.
yeah. So he had to start from zero to get back in the game.
Wow. Okay.
So if you're ever feeling like, hey, no, man, me and so-and-so been friends since we were kids, just go look up that story and then go, oh, my gosh. Okay, I'll call the lawyer tomorrow. Keep it straight across the board. Have everybody signed on for what exactly they're doing, who owns what. Keep it all the same so you don't end up in court. Because I've seen it. I've lived it. It's not fun. Mel, anything else you'd add to this conversation?
No, I concur. Not agree, I concur.
And this is the least favorite video that we'll make out of the series because it's the one that nobody ever wants to think is going to happen to them.
Usually it's the people who are going to screw somebody over who doesn't want to think about it.
Right. That could be true. All right. Well, that is going to do it for the How To Podcast Step-by-Step Guide brought to you by freepodcasttools.com. Mel, I can't thank you enough. And we look forward to revealing your podcast in the future.
I look forward to finishing these steps and making sure I got all my ducks in a row. And yes, we will be announcing a podcast shortly.
Excellent. And tune in and hear Mel's audio once we start that podcast, because it is going to be night and day difference.
Nice.
All right. Thank you so much. For more free guides, reviews, opinion pieces, and much, much more, head to freepodcasttools.com. We're signing off.